off on an attack because a deal will be made, which will be very acceptable to the United States of America as well as all countries in the Middle East and beyond. Speaking to reporters later on Monday, he said the United States would be satisfied if it could reach an agreement with Iran that prevented Tehran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Admiral Brand Cooper, the commander of the U.S. Central Command, appears before the House Armed Services Committee on War in Iran.
See where there is also instability. So the number one biggest thing is how can we bring more stability to the region, work with partners, allies, others in the region to get us to a better place than we are in right now, because it is as bad as it's been for a very, very long time. On Iran, I disagree with the chairman, unsurprisingly. Yes, we have knocked back a lot of Iran's capability. The truth of the matter is, in all the questions that I've asked, we don't know for sure how much. We don't know exactly how many ballistic missiles they have, what their capabilities are. We know it has been substantially weakened, but we don't have specific answers to that. We also have to worry about the fact that Russia, China, and North Korea are more than willing to be helpful to Iran, and I'm not sure, threats aside, we're in a position to change their mind about that. So we have to be worried about that. But we do know for sure, whatever capability Iran has, they have the capability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And frankly, I don't care whether they've got 75% less ballistic missiles, 80% less ballistic missiles. They clearly, the regime is in place. It's not going anywhere. It is more hardline than it was when this war started, and they have done something that they had not previously done, which is shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is causing massive economic disasters for us and for the entire world. So, we can go through the body count here and say we destroyed this many ballistic missiles, we destroyed this many launchers, we set their capability back. That's all fascinating. Strategically, we are in a disaster right now, and that's what needs to be fixed. And we do not see a path out of that. Let's just focus on the nuclear weapon program, because any criticism of the war is sort of met with, well, gosh, if it wasn't for the war, Iran would have already detonated nuclear weapons in the Middle East. That's completely ridiculous. I mean, that's an argument for Fox News and Newsmax maybe, but in the real world, that doesn't justify what has happened, because the nuclear program for Iran is no weaker today than it was when this war started. We have destroyed none of their nuclear material and set them back not one tiny little bit. The only thing that has changed on Iran's nuclear program, they are now unwilling to negotiate about it. They were willing to negotiate. They were actively negotiating about it when we started this war. So please, let's not get over into the detail about, oh, we destroyed this many missiles, this many launchers. What is the strategic plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and get us any closer to stopping Iran's nuclear program? For all the criticisms of the previous presidents, which of course the current president was one of those previous presidents, all of those previous presidents managed to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon without dropping the Middle East and much of the world into chaos. That is really the difference right now. And I know most of the uniformed folks, when we ask these questions, say, well, we're just going to tell you what's going on. We don't do the strategy. I find that an incredibly unacceptable answer, and not an answer that I had ever gotten before from uniformed personnel under any other president. The whole "we just work here" thing doesn't really work. You guys should have strategic answers, and you should be willing to share them with the American people and with this committee. Where we're at right now is the president, every few days, threatens to kill as many Iranians as humanly possible. He does it in a variety of different language, but basically, no quarter, we will erase their civilization, we'll kill every single person in Iran. And the chairman's absolutely right. The Iranian regime is awful, evil, terrible. They've killed tens of thousands of Iranian civilians and done terrible things throughout the region. What, are we in a competition with them now to talk about how many Iranian civilians we can kill? So just saying that pushes a good chunk of the world further away from us. They're like, I don't know that we want to deal with those people. But of course, he says it, and then the next day or 2 days later doesn't do anything, much less that, and then claims that Iran is now willing to negotiate on all these issues. In fact, the absolute nadir of this process was, I think it was 4 weeks ago, when I woke up Friday morning and the president said, Iran has completely capitulated. You remember that? The war was over. Iran had agreed to get rid of their nukes, get rid of their terrorism support, get rid of their ballistic missiles, open up. The strait was open. And there was reporting all day long like this was real. The president literally made it up. There was no progress whatsoever. And now the credibility of our entire country, because sadly the credibility of our country hinges on the credibility of our president, is dead. Who's going to believe anything we say? There is no evidence today that Iran is negotiating any of these things. Their position has not budged. Pay us to open up the strait. That's basically their position, which is an incredibly weaker position for us. So what we need to know today is what's the strategic plan to get us out of this hole we're in. And thumping our chest about how many successful missions we ran doesn't change the fact that our economy is in the toilet. Inflation is higher than it's been in 3 or 4 years. Gas prices are up $1.50, and there's no end in sight. And it's worse for the rest of the world. Because as the president dismissively pointed out, but correctly pointed out, the rest of the world is more dependent upon the Strait of Hormuz being open than we are, which makes them just so grateful to us for having effectively shut it down. So let's hear a plan that isn't the president getting up in the morning and imagining that somehow wish fulfillment works in foreign policy, imagining that Iran has completely capitulated to all of our demands. What is an actual plan to get us out of this hole that the United States has done such an outstanding job of digging for all of us? That's what we need to hear today. I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. Now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. First, we have the Honorable Dan Zimmerman, Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, Admiral Brad Cooper, Commander of CENTCOM, and General Dagbin Anderson, Commander of AFRICOM. Welcome to our witnesses. Mr. Zimmerman, we'll start with you. You're recognized.
Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the posture of our forces and strategic priorities within the U.S. Central Command and U.S. Africa Command areas of responsibility. It is my honor to appear alongside CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper and AFRICOM Commander General Anderson. My testimony today will focus on the Department's approach to posture and strategy in these two theaters and how that is guided by our National Defense Strategy, or NDS. The NDS is based on the principles of peace through strength and America First foreign policy, flowing from the conviction that a government's first duty is always to its own citizens. Our strategy has 4 succinct lines of effort. First, we will defend the homeland. Second, we will deter China in the Indo-Pacific. Third, we will encourage and expect our allies and partners to step up and take more responsibility, especially in those areas where they have direct national security interests. And finally, to achieve all of this, we must supercharge the U.S. defense industrial base. Our strategy is America First. The United States will prioritize theaters and challenges with the greatest consequence for American interests and where only American power can play a decisive role. Our adversaries must understand without doubt that the United States possesses both the capability and the political will to use decisive force to protect its vital interests and to safeguard the security and prosperity of the American people. As the NDS lays out, we aim to work with and support our allies and partners around the world to deter threats, set conditions for peace, and to pursue mutual security interests. Regarding the Middle East, President Trump has made clear that the United States seeks a more peaceful and prosperous Middle East, one defined by commerce and not chaos. This needs to be a Middle East where our allies and partners invest in and take the lead in responsibility for their own security. But to be clear, the United States will always retain the ability to act decisively to defend ourselves and our allies where and when we need. Operation Epic Fury is an example of this strategy in action. The President initiated Operation Epic Fury in direct response to the Iranian regime that waged a one-sided war against America for 47 years that threatened allies and partners and caused thousands of American casualties. And I would like to mention here and acknowledge the 14 fallen service members. We honor them and their families. Across every domain, land, sea, air, and cyber, the U.S. joint force delivered synchronized and layered effects to disrupt, degrade, and destroy Iran's ability to conduct and sustain combat operations. The Secretary has noted that although Operation Epic Fury was historic for its complexity, lethality, and precision, it also had a laser-focused mission, scoped to our interests and the defense of our people and our allies. President Trump also seeks to redefine the United States relationship with Africa, transitioning from an aid-focused relationship to a trade and investment-focused relationship, favoring partnerships with capable, reliable states intent on achieving common interests. Our department will take a resource-sustainable approach to counterterrorism and stand ready to take direct action against Islamic terrorists in Africa who are both capable of and intent on striking the U.S. homeland, while empowering African and other partners to lead efforts to degrade and destroy terrorist organizations throughout the continent. Our operation with Nigeria over the weekend is an example of this strategy in action. Working alongside Nigerian partners, U.S. forces executed a raid in northeast Nigeria, killing the ISIS Global Director of Operations, Bilal al-Muniki, and members of his inner circle. Muniki will no longer be able to plot against American citizens and interests. In conclusion, the Department of War will continue without wavering to defend and secure the freedom and prosperity of the United States. Our posture in the U.S. CENTCOM and U.S. AFRICOM AORs is a coherent and integrated execution of our national defense strategy. It is an America First policy that advances peace through strength. Under the direction of President Trump, the Department has demonstrated our commitment and capability to defend the homeland and secure American priorities abroad while encouraging our allies and partners to increasingly shoulder responsibility on mutual security interests. The Department is confident in this strategy, in our exceptional service members, and in our ability to defend the United States. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Admiral Cooper, you're recognized.
Well, good morning, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today, and thanks especially to the committee for your steadfast support to the U.S. military and to U.S. Central Command. I'm pleased to join today with Commander of U.S. Africa Command, my good friend General Dag Anderson, and Assistant Secretary Dan Zimmerman. I'm grateful to be accompanied by my wife Susan, representing the families of the more than 50,000 service members deployed Middle East. I'm also pleased to be joined by Fleet Command Master Chief Lateef Compton, the senior enlisted leader of CENTCOM. Recent events in the Central region show how quickly the course of history can change. Decades-old features of the strategic landscape, believed immutable, have been upended, bringing both challenges and opportunities. I strongly believe that every success that we have starts and ends with our people. In just the last 7 months, America's sons and daughters serving in CENTCOM have played key roles in implementing the President's 20-point peace plan for Gaza, degrading the ISIS threat in Syria, preventing an ISIS crisis by conducting a historic transfer of over 5,700 ISIS prisoners from Syria to Iraq, creating the most integrated and effective regional air defense architecture ever seen, which was decades in the making, and most recently addressing the rapidly accelerating Iranian threat. U.S. Central Command was created in direct response to the threats posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I'm the 16th CENTCOM commander to deal with the Iranian problem set. For 47 years, the Iranian regime terrorized the region and made hostility to the United States a core tenet of its rule. The regime is an even more deadly threat to its own people, killing tens of thousands of innocent Iranians during protests in January, with public executions ongoing. Iran has long had 3 pillars of intimidation and coercion: their nuclear program, their ballistic missiles and drones, and their proxies, especially Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Let's look at each of these. First, all signs pointed to Iran's intent to create a nuclear weapon capability. And then to protect their nuclear program, Iran built thousands of ballistic missiles and drones, and they did it for 2 reasons: to create a shield to make their nuclear site untouchable, and to create an offensive capability so large that regional partners couldn't possibly defend against it. Along the way, their proxies did Iran's dirty work across the region.